Purchase orders can be generated automatically from three areas: from posted requisitions, low stock levels in inventory control, and from items on sales orders in order entry. Let's begin with posted requisitions. If multiple requisitions exist where purchase orders need to be created, enter the requisitions to be generated using either the requisition number range, the date range that the requisitions were created, or the vendor number range identified on the requisitions to use. To consolidate all requisition details when the same vendor, item, unit of measure, location, or expected arrival date is the same, select this option. Consolidation does not occur if the drop ship option is selected for an item on a requisition. In addition, this option is not available if optional fields are defined. This is because different detail lines may have different values defined for optional fields and cannot be consolidated. Select the Include Blank Vendors option if you want to create requisition details, defined with a blank vendor number, to purchase orders created for vendors who are assigned to the respective items that are being ordered. For example, assume item A has two vendors assigned within the vendor details section of inventory control. Vendor 1 for item A is identified as 1200, and vendor 2 for item A is identified as 1400. If vendor 1 is selected in the Use IC Vendor Type field, item A is ordered from vendor 1200. If vendor 2 is selected, item A is ordered from vendor 1400. Those items that do not have vendor numbers entered are not ordered. The Optional Fields page is where purchase order header optional fields are assigned. The Detail Optional Fields page is where optional fields are defined for each individual item detail that the requisition function creates. Optional fields are discussed in a later session. The Process button generates the purchase orders using the selected criteria. The purchase orders created can be reviewed before printing them using the standard purchase order entry icon. The Create POs from IC icon is used to create purchase orders automatically from items that are low in stock. The Run Date field is the date Accpac assigns the purchase orders that this function creates. This is also the date the system uses to determine the period from which to order the item specified in the Reorder Quantities field in inventory control. For example, if item A has a reorder quantity of 100 between January 1st and March 1st, a run date of February looks at the current item quantity level and the 100 reorder point to determine if any items need to be ordered. Next, select the vendor number range for which you want to create purchase orders, and then the item number range for which purchase orders determines the items to be created. The Reorder Quantities For field indicates the location, or all locations, the system reviews to determine if items need to be reordered. If specific location is selected, enter the location range to observe. Select the vendors to query in the lower left section of the window. For example, selecting vendor 1 and 2 cause purchase orders to determine the items to order by their vendor type. Items in the range specified are selected if the vendor number specified is one of the selected vendors in the vendor details section of inventory control. Then indicate what items to order in the reorder section. All items says to order all selected items that are below their maximum quantities in inventory control. Items below minimum says to order selected items if their on-hand quantities are below the minimum quantities entered for them in the Reorder Quantities section in inventory control. And items below projected sales for says to order items if on-hand quantities are below the period's projected sales for the number of days entered in the next field. And finally, indicate the quantity to order in the Reorder Quantity section. Up to maximum indicates to order the quantity of the selected items up to or close to, but not over, the maximum amount specified in the Reorder Quantities icon in Inventory Control. Above maximum indicates to order the item quantity for the selected items for at least the maximum amount specified for the item in the Reorder Quantities icon in Inventory Control. The above maximum option can result in quantities that are higher than the maximum amount. Up to projected sales for X days indicates to order item quantities that bring each item's quantity on hand up to or close to, but not over, the projected sales quantity defined with the item for the number of days specified. And finally, above projected sales for X days indicates to order the item quantity that increases the quantity on hand for each item at least up to and possibly more than the quantity defined with the item for the number of days specified based on the run date. The Process button generates the purchase orders using the selected criteria. The purchase orders created can be reviewed before printing them using the standard purchase order entry icon. The Create POs from OE icon is used to create purchase orders automatically from items found on posted sales orders. There are several options to determine which sales orders are used to generate purchase orders. The first is to enter or select the range of customers that have existing sales orders for which items exist requiring purchase orders to be generated. Alternatively, the search can be done by entering a range of sales orders, defined in order entry, or by searching by a range of order dates. And finally, by the expected ship date of the sales order. Next, select the vendor type to identify the items for which purchase orders are to be created. The system creates purchase orders only for items that have the selected vendor type, vendor 1 through vendor 9, assigned. For example, if item A has vendor 1200 assigned as vendor 1 and vendor 1500 assigned as vendor 2, a purchase order for vendor 1200 is created if vendor 1 is selected in the vendor type field. Vendor 1500 is used if vendor 2 is selected. It should be noted that if vendor 3 through 9 is selected, and item A did not have a vendor assigned to vendor 3 through 9, item A would not appear on a purchase order. Because of this, use vendor 1 as your primary vendor and work down from there. Then select how Accpac should create purchase orders. Select vendor if a single purchase order is to be created for each vendor for all the items where the vendor number matches. For example, if items A, D, and R are assigned to be ordered from vendor 1200, a single purchase order for vendor 1200 is created showing items A, D, and R. Or you can select to create purchase orders by sales order. This option creates a separate purchase order for each sales order requiring items, which populates the sales order field on the purchase order. So when items are received, the shippable backorders report can be printed showing which sales orders to fill. This option potentially generates multiple purchase orders for the same vendor. For example, if items A, D, and R are from different sales orders, but vendor 1200 is the selected vendor for all three items, 3 separate purchase orders get generated using the order option. Next, determine which items and item quantities to order in the Include section. All items indicates to order sufficient quantity to fill the sales order regardless of the current item stock level. Items with insufficient quantities indicates to order only those items for which there are not enough units in stock to fill the selected sales orders. Where items on back order indicates to order only the number of units of each item for which a backorder quantity exists. If the same item exists on multiple sales orders, the system automatically tracks the quantities from each so enough items are ordered. The Drop Ship Items option populates the drop ship address on the purchase order with the customer's address, rather than the items arriving on the receiving dock. This option may result in multiple purchase orders being created for the same vendor because the same item may exist on more than one sales order. The Consolidate Items option consolidates item details on the purchase order for the same item number if the same location and unit of measure are defined on the sales order. For example, if item A exists on two different sales orders, both identified as being shipped from location 1, and both being sold as eaches, a single detail line on the purchase order is created with the quantities combined. Consolidation cannot occur if the drop ship option is selected or if optional fields are defined for purchase order creation. The Include Non-Stock Items option generates a purchase order for items on sales orders that are flagged as non-stock in inventory control. Non-stock items are items that exist in inventory but are not normally stocked, such as special order items or kit items. The Process button generates the purchase orders using the selected criteria. The purchase orders created can be reviewed before printing them using the standard purchase order entry icon.
You have successfully completed this topic and learned how to enter requisitions, purchase orders, receipts, invoices, returns, and debit credit notes, and perform periodic processing for auto-generating purchase orders, clearing history information, and printing reports. For homework, please review Module 6 of the Course Reference Guide and complete the Inventory Control Order Entry Purchase Order Case Study through Lesson 6. For review, you can complete the exam crayons, which are launched from your profile at Sage Software University.